Venezuela holds a peculiar distinction in the global landscape. It boasts the world's largest proven oil reserves, even surpassing Saudi Arabia. This abundance of natural wealth, however, stands in stark contrast to the nation's current state. Venezuela, once a beacon of prosperity in Latin America, is now mired in a deep economic crisis. How did a nation so richly endowed with resources fall into such despair? Venezuela's story is a cautionary tale. The discovery of oil, initially a beacon of hope, ultimately set in motion a chain of events that reshaped the nation's trajectory. The influx of oil revenue, while initially fueling growth, also sowed the seeds of future instability. The allure of easy wealth proved to be a double-edged sword, fostering reliance on a single commodity and neglecting other sectors. Long before oil became synonymous with modern industry, the indigenous peoples of Venezuela recognized its unique properties. It served as a sealant for boats, a waterproofing agent for baskets, and even a rudimentary form of medicine. These early encounters with oil paled in comparison to its transformative impact once its potential as a fuel source was realized. The arrival of European colonialism marked a turning point in Venezuela's relationship with oil. Small-scale oil extraction began, primarily for local use and export to Spain. The 19th century saw a surge in global demand for oil, driven by the Industrial Revolution. Foreign investment poured in, particularly from the United States and Europe, eager to exploit this valuable resource. The oil boom forever altered the nation's social, economic, and political landscape. The early 20th century saw a dramatic escalation in Venezuela's oil production. By the 1920s, Venezuela had become the world's largest oil exporter. The surge in oil revenue brought significant economic growth, but also highlighted a phenomenon economists call Dutch disease. The flood of oil revenue led to an appreciation of the national currency, making exports more expensive and imports cheaper. This hampered the competitiveness of other sectors, making the economy increasingly reliant on oil. As oil revenues soared, so did government spending on infrastructure and social programs. While these investments initially fueled growth, they also fostered a culture of dependency on oil revenue. The reliance on a single commodity created a fragile economic structure, overly dependent on the volatile global oil market. The dominance of foreign oil companies in Venezuela sparked a wave of nationalism. Many Venezuelans resented the control foreign entities exerted over their nation's most valuable resource. This sentiment laid the groundwork for a profound shift in Venezuela's relationship with oil. In 1976, under President Carlos Andrés Pérez, the oil industry was nationalized. The creation of Petróleos de Venezuela, S.A., PDVSA, marked the beginning of a new era. The nationalization of oil was widely celebrated as a victory for Venezuela. PDVSA faced the daunting task of maintaining production levels and managing complex operations. The success of this endeavor depended heavily on the competence of its leadership and the stability of the political landscape. The nationalization of the oil industry inadvertently set the stage for the oil curse to take hold in Venezuela. The concentration of vast wealth in the hands of the state, coupled with a lack of transparency, created fertile ground for corruption. PDVSA became a cash cow for successive governments. Oil revenues were often siphoned off to fund patronage networks or line the pockets of corrupt officials. The mismanagement and corruption that plagued Venezuela's oil industry had a devastating impact on the nation's economy. The election of Hugo Chávez as president in 1998 marked a turning point in Venezuela's history. His socialist policies, known as Chavismo, had a profound impact on Venezuela's landscape. Chávez's rise coincided with soaring oil prices, providing his government with a windfall of revenue. He embarked on an ambitious social spending program known as the Bolivarian missions. The Chávez government also tightened its grip on PDVSA, leading to further mismanagement and a decline in production. Despite soaring oil prices, Venezuela's economy became increasingly vulnerable as oil revenues were used to fund unsustainable social programs. The first decade of the 21st century witnessed a dramatic decline in Venezuela's economic fortunes. The nation that once boasted the world's largest oil reserves found itself teetering on the brink of collapse. The collapse in oil prices in 2014 dealt a devastating blow to Venezuela's already fragile economy. The government, heavily reliant on oil revenue, found itself with dwindling resources. The bolivar went into freefall, leading to hyperinflation that wiped out the savings of ordinary citizens. The economic crisis quickly escalated into a humanitarian disaster. Millions of Venezuelans fled the country, creating a refugee crisis that reverberated throughout the region. The economic collapse in Venezuela had a devastating impact on the lives of ordinary citizens. Hyperinflation rendered the bolivar practically worthless. Food, medicine, and other essentials became scarce and prohibitively expensive. Hospitals, lacking basic supplies, struggled to provide even rudimentary care. Malnutrition rates soared, particularly among children. The collapse of the Venezuelan economy triggered a mass exodus of its citizens. Millions of Venezuelans fled to neighboring countries, seeking refuge and opportunity. The crisis in Venezuela stands as a stark reminder that economic prosperity is not guaranteed, even for nations endowed with vast natural resources. The tragic tale of Venezuela's economic collapse offers profound lessons for nations managing resource wealth. One key takeaway is the danger of relying too heavily on a single commodity for economic growth. The Dutch disease can have devastating consequences, as evidenced by Venezuela's collapse following the decline in oil prices. Venezuela's experience underscores the importance of strong institutions, transparency, and accountability. When oil revenues are treated as a slush fund for political patronage, the stage is set for economic disaster. Investing in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and technological innovation is crucial for creating a diversified and resilient economy. Ignoring these pillars of development while squandering resource wealth is a recipe for disaster. Venezuela's experience holds valuable lessons for all resource-rich nations, underscoring the importance of responsible resource management and good governance.